Good day, everybody. This is not a news show. This is a platform. Welcome to That Heathen Bastard. I'm the Heathen Bastard. Now, I've been meaning to broach this topic for some time now. It's difficult for me for a number of reasons, but it needs to be discussed. People need to know. And at the end of the day, I'm not asking for anything in particular other than just listen and consider and think. That's all you gotta do. I'm gonna tell you a little story, a lengthy story about racial prejudice on a white person. So, there's a number of people who have experienced racial prejudice who are white. Myself included. It's not talked about, it's not discussed, it's unpopular, and it goes against conventional wisdom, which projects prejudice as something which can only be experienced by minorities. But the truth is, anyone can experience it. There's no special group that is uniquely immune. That is a mythology. Now, I will have some difficulty with this, but I need to speak on what is essentially verbal abuse on my person. Now, I think it all literally began in 2017, which saw a noticeable uptick in soured race relations. Many blamed this on Barack Obama, but I largely blamed it on the far left being inflammatory and being, overly vilifying and over-demonizing white people, among other things, and turning a blind eye to prejudice from black people towards other non-whites, which is also an issue that deserves its own discussion at some point. Now, what happened to my person is I first heard about this news of what was going down in South Africa. And a black nationalist from that part of the world in a YouTube comment section when I was talking about what was going on down there, a dude talking about possible race war issues, where for every, they're going to kill every 5 whites for every 2 blacks, blah, blah, blah. Some dude came into the comments and he was just like saying to any white commentators, myself included, that our DNA is 8% different because white women like to sleep with dogs and we're part dog, and our pineal gland is rotted away, saying we're some sort of mutant from bestiality. A disgusting comment, to be sure. Quite sickening. Then I saw some Arab dude on Facebook making racist comments about various groups. I called him out. He called me a goat fucker and sent me cryptic messages in, I believe, Arabic that were racist in nature. I can still find those messages on my phone, I think. I don't want to look for them. I don't want to have to spend too much time remembering that. But there were some other pieces of verbal abuse against my person, including racist messages about how wishing for peace in continental Europe is pointless because whites are inherently violent and no peace in Europe can ever be established. And then, Arab person sending me derogatory battle maps where Europe's all lit up like a Christmas tree. Derogatory comments from leftists. Them basically gaslighting me about my experiences, making me doubt my experiences, trying to. I was briefly interested in white separatism while I was dealing with my feelings. And I had a brief involvement with a certain black metal musician, a former black metal musician, who may have given his roommate one too many fatal pokes. And I got to meet the man. Needless to say, I think he's an asshole. Racism aside, this individual in question is an asshole. And if you're wondering, his name rhymes with barge. His first name rhymed with barge. So that, so that's totally up to you to look into that. But I don't want to say his name for secrecy's sake. Partly because of doxing concerns and other things. I'd rather their ideas be out in the open and they be combated on them than being deplatformed. That's just not how I roll. But yes, there's been instances of verbal abuse on my person, and it's taken me a long time to deal with it emotionally. Longer than I ever expected it to. These instances were not... There are more serious forms of racial prejudice, certainly, but these are the kinds of experiences that a person simply cannot experience and walk away the same person they were before they had that experience. They're life-changing in a bad way. There's an ugliness in me that didn't used to be there that I have to contend with now. At this point, it's not even the hurt from being verbally abused. It's the ugliness that has found a home in me that I have to deal with now. Then there was an instance where my neighbor, a black neighbor of mine, scaring the absolute shit out of me. I was just out on my walk. I was out for a walk, minding my own business, and he comes out, starts screaming about white people maybe a day or two after Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd. And his daughter had to come out, tell him to shut up and get back in the house because he was screaming and raving. My heart felt like it was about to come leaping up out of my chest. Like, I was legit terrified. It's like unbelievable. It's just unbelievable in the middle of an otherwise peaceful neighborhood. Like, that was scary to me. That would have been scary to a lot of people, I imagine. So between past instances of verbal abuse and a serious lack of compassion from anyone who knows my story, like, you need to stop giving me reason to hate people, because I already had plenty. As I'm already more or less a misanthropist, and now you're just making it worse. Like I said, at this point it's not even the hurt over past instances of prejudice now. Now it's just the ugliness that I have to contend with. Now, I wanted to talk to you about the phenomenon and feelings, personal feelings of white guilt, and dealing with having the same skin color and a genetic connection to people who did unspeakable horrors, and just my feelings about the whole thing. And at the end of the day, you cannot be held responsible for the actions of someone else. Never. Personal responsibility. Interpersonal responsibility is unfair. It is straight up North Korea style bullshit with like generational imprisonment. In North Korea, you can literally go to prison for 50 years for something your grandfather did. That is horrific. The idea of collective guilt comes from the same general kind of thinking. That form of white guilt is horrific, it is prejudiced, and it's awful. But it's only really exhibited like by a handful of like uber far left wackadoos who are never going to be able to act on it in a meaningful capacity. But white guilt as an emotional phenomenon, a feeling of irrational self-loathing, is a really very, very real psychological phenomenon that deserves some kind of solution. All I can say is learn to love yourself and learn to love your family, ground yourself in something, and then just face your demons directly. If you try and run away from them, they're going to chase you down and they're going to eat you alive. You cannot escape your demons running. You have to turn and face them while grounding yourself in something. And at the end of the day, which is something I say a lot, it's not always a bed of roses to be white. It is not worse than any other race, and in some ways it might be better. But it's certainly not a bed of roses. This is probably why a lot of whites don't like to think about race, because it comes with a lot of negative feelings and emotions, and it's a very loaded topic, and many would just prefer not to deal with it. And I feel like with the, most issues that are uniquely white come from the over-vilification and the high likelihood of being accused of racism. We are more likely to be accused of racism than anyone else. And that can have very real consequences. Nick Sandmann, right? They were trying to say that he was harassing Nathan Phillips, and his reputation was destroyed, and people were talking about tossing him and his school friends into a wood chipper. Because of CNN's bullshit reporting, it was the other way around. Nathan Phillips was harassing him. But the white kid gets accused. Why? Why didn't they consider the possibility that the Indian, that the Native American was the harasser? How did that not come as a possible thing to consider? Why did that not occur? Because there's a climate where everyone assumes the white guy is the racist. These sorts of accusations carry with them real consequences. And many whites are cowards. They're too afraid of being mislabeled a racist to speak up when real issues happen. Like Islamic rape gangs who target blonde white women because they're exotic in their culture, which has been going on since the Barbary Coast. So suffice to say, there is a minority of whites who can honestly say that they have been mistreated for their skin color. There's quite a few, actually. And I cannot speak for many because I'm an introvert and I don't really like people very much. So I'm not that connected. But I do know of at least one Christian pastor named Mike Winger who was viciously assaulted when he was 12 in front of a 7-Eleven by a bunch of black thugs who just wanted to pick on a poor white kid. He's a very intelligent man, and if you're looking for arguments for Christianity, either for or against, he's someone to seriously look into. Very intelligent, well-educated. He's not your typical, creationist doofus. And I mean that, because there's a lot of very unintelligent creationists out there. Hoo boy. But let's not get off topic. But at the end of the day, I'm not asking for much. I just want acknowledgement of this issue and higher accountability for racists or people exposing their prejudice regardless of the skin color. The skin color of the perpetrator and of the victim should not matter. At the end of the day, if someone's being harassed or attacked for their skin color, who cares which one it is? It's never okay and it's never acceptable. Period. And racial prejudice becomes a very different beast when you understand it from an individual perspective, being that literally anyone of any skin color can experience it at almost any time. Which skin color you have increases the likelihood or decreases the likelihood, but it's never zero. It is never zero. I've met people who honestly believe that it's okay to be prejudiced against whites just because some white people were super prejudiced from forever ago. It's like, oh, KKK and Nazis existed and they were white, so it's okay to be mean and nasty to white people because KKK and Nazis existed. There are people like that. And they obviously have their own issues. And I don't know what's wrong with them, but they need to be held accountable for those kinds of attitudes and when they decide to act on them. That is even not even remotely acceptable And there just should be higher accountability. There should be high accountability for a white woman wearing a blackface gorilla mask and throwing an egg at a black man. A white Democrat harassing a black Republican. Where have I heard? Where have I seen that before? Where have I heard about that before? Or that should be considered no different, honestly, than an Arab telling you you're inherently violent and wishing for peace in continental Europe is pointless. That should be seen as no different. They're both bad, period. And I have developed my own prejudices because of these experiences that I don't like to talk about. I don't like to talk about the fact that I find Arabs and Arab culture in general just very disgusting. That's my phone. Or the fact that I've looked in on the black community and I see a lot about black subculture. I've lost a lot of respect for black people. And generally speaking, if I hear a black person complaining about, I was called the N-word, I'm like, I'm probably gonna ask them the question, like, did you call him a chink? Did you call him a cracker? And if they say yes, I'm like, okay, cool, then I don't care. Like, you mess with the bull, you got the horns. If you insulted them first, then I'm not going to care. Unless you're an absolute 100% completely innocent victim, I'm not going to care. And if you're one of these like Jesse Smollett types, I call them Smolletts, black people who fake hate crimes for attention, I don't give a shit about what happens to you. I've lost a lot of respect for the black community. And I'm sure a lot of people can echo that sentiment. But when it comes down to it, we just need to learn to treat people right. We need to treat people properly. Dignity and respect should be afforded. Some form of basic dignity and basic respect should be afforded to a lot of people. Even if you don't like someone or even hate them, at the end of the day, what you want to do is you want to treat them properly anyway, in order to avoid creating an environment of prejudice, anger, and hate that continues to hurt people. Change the course of events by switching the polarity. You don't put out fire by pouring fire on it, you put out fire by pouring water on it. And as much as you don't want to, treat people properly, but also give them their just desserts. You avoid prejudice by responding to it with its opposite. You promote healing, and you help people get past their issues, whether you want to or not. And the best advice I can give you, honestly, is if you're in an environment where prejudice is likely and you're experiencing it, then just get the hell out of there. That's the best you can do. If you feel like you can't take it, then just get the hell out of there. I've already identified the kinds of people I need to avoid. And I've been doing it for some time now very successfully. And you can probably do the same. But yeah. I've been wanting to tell this story and make a video on this for some time now. Even maybe do something in person. But the subject is particularly difficult to broach. Because when a white person complains about prejudice of any kind they might have experienced, nobody really cares. It's like, sorry, man, you gotta have more. You have to have more melanin in your skin before anyone should care. Like, if you don't have that enough melanin, then it doesn't matter. You're melanin deficient. Nobody cares. It doesn't matter. That's how some people act, actually. So at this point, it's no longer the hurt. It's just contending with the ugliness that I find in myself now, having experienced such things, and desperately wanting not to have to act on it, and continuing the cycle. Those who've been hurt go on to hurt others, and then it never ends. And I just want to try and avoid that. So there you go. You listen to me pour my heart out for a few minutes. So say what you want, think what you want, but thank you for listening anyway. In retrospect, it could have been a lot worse. I could have got beat up. I could have ended up like Mike Winger. I could have been attacked in a more serious fashion. But it was verbal abuse of a type I had never previously experienced, so I had no, I guess you could say, no immune response to it. I've experienced other forms of verbal abuse, just not for my skin color before. So it was new, and it cut deeper, and it hurt worse because it was new. I think that's really what it came down to, is I just never experienced that before. So yeah. So there it is, folks. Choose peace.